Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menashe. On today's show, we're talking about affordable housing. The question of affordability is reaching a crisis level in many communities all over the nation. The problem is when you do the math with the true cost of development land, impact fees, and the cost of new construction, the economics just don't support building a lot of new affordable housing. It simply doesn't add up. We hear about it in major metro areas like New York City, Los Angeles, Seattle, Miami, Vancouver, Toronto, and the list goes on. But we also hear about it in smaller resort towns. On today's show, we're going to be focusing on those smaller resort towns. People want to visit the idyllic resort towns of Banff, Aspen, Vail, Sun Valley. The problem is that the most profitable real estate to develop is for the owner-occupant, for the vacationer. Why, as a developer, would you build affordable housing that gets you maybe $1.50 per square foot in rent when you can build a hotel room or a timeshare that rents for $2 to $3 per square foot? A myopic developer will choose the higher real estate value every time. The problem is, people won't come and occupy those pricey ski chalets if nobody's there to serve dinner at the nearby local brewpub or stock the shelves in the local grocery. Many of these service jobs in these small but affluent towns are going unfilled. I see it in Whistler, British Columbia, the site of the 2010 Winter Olympics. I see it in Banff, Sun Valley, Aspen, Vail, just to name a few. The city folks who have purchased the expensive fractional ownership condo, or perhaps even a ski-in, ski-out chalet at the base of the mountain, are generally opposing large-scale workforce housing projects. They don't want to create a workforce ghetto that could change the character of the town. This seems to be a form of NIMBY at its worst. To make matters worse, the Internet's made it possible for seasonal resort towns to transition from purely vacation destinations to more of a year-round residence, set in the mountains or some other serene oasis in a wilderness location. The problem is that many properties in resort towns have not been purpose-designed for a specific client. Workers often end up in older resort properties that have lost their luster as a vacation property. They sometimes end up in rural properties that are located within a 30-minute radius of the resort town, but then that requires the additional cost of transportation. And many resort town workers are seasonal employees who have traveled from overseas. It's common to see young people coming from Australia or New Zealand for a season of work in a resort town. These folks are coming with a single suitcase and their skis. They're not going to buy a car or rent a car. The economics just don't support the long-term commitment of that overhead. Workforce housing in resort towns requires purpose-built, clean accommodations specifically designed for the seasonal worker who's coming to the resort town to work for a season or a year or two. They're looking for basic shared amenities. They're also usually fine with a co-living situation where they're renting a single room in a shared apartment with perhaps up to 6 people. The question of affordability comes down to a budget decision. If someone's earning $35,000 a year in a retail job, they can probably afford a maximum of about $800 a month in rent. They're not thinking about the cost per square foot. They're thinking about their monthly budget. You'll hear words like, "My bedroom is cozy, but it's clean and I have my own bathroom. That's important to me. We have a shared kitchen with 2 refrigerators and cupboard space for every one of my housemates to keep their own pantry. The dining area is large and we have enough space in the common area so it doesn't feel crowded." What I'm describing is eminently feasible. These are not radical ideas. You just need to know who your client is and what their needs are. Real estate investing successfully always comes down to making sure the economics work in an environment where demand and ability to pay exceeds the supply. So what I just said may sound counterintuitive. We're talking about affordable housing, and I'm lumping ability to pay into the equation. But if you're truly designing with affordability in mind, I can tell you with great certainty that it's possible to design a product that's purpose-built with the needs and affordability of the seasonal resort worker in mind. If you know that your average retail worker or restaurant server can afford $800 a month or $900 a month, it's absolutely possible to create dedicated living accommodations that meet the affordability criteria. Units might be small in size, but they can be affordable and they can be high quality. Some of the most expensive cities in the world, like Tokyo and Seoul, have been tackling this issue for decades. And I don't see the same type of high-density urban thinking being applied to workforce housing in resort towns. That doesn't mean you need to build a 40-story building. That wouldn't make any sense. But a 5- or 6-story structure can definitely achieve the economics required to deliver the housing that's required. We also see that commercial developers who are designing commercial retail space are not using traditional, walkable community designs that have existed in resort towns in Europe for decades. Mixed-use commercial and residential space is inexpensive to construct. 2 floors of residential above the commercial space doesn't detract from the commercial Main Street character of the retail space, but I rarely see developers designing these types of buildings in resort towns. So if you're interested in developing high-value markets that have acute shortages of employee housing, all it takes is a little creativity and a willingness to work with those local communities to get the buy-in for the types of old-world, innovative properties. What's old is new again. As you think about that, have an awesome rest of your day. Go make some great things happen. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.